can't do that in a garage. There's just a few places in the world with the right equipment and only a few people in the world with the right training to be able to do that.
When people hear about a case reaching the highest level of the court system, they usually think of politics, big corporations, or serious criminal matters. But now, something very unexpected is entering that space, a car rebuild project. The situation involving Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac is being talked about not just in garages or YouTube comments, but in discussions about law, ownership rights, and the future of the automotive industry. At the center of this entire debate is one powerful question. If you legally buy a car, do you truly own it, or does the manufacturer still have control over what you can and cannot do with it? This question becomes even more serious when the car in question is something like the Bugatti Chiron, one of the most advanced and expensive machines ever built. Companies like Bugatti do not just sell cars. They sell engineering perfection, brand image, and a tightly controlled ecosystem where every part, every repair, and every process is carefully managed. Because of this, they believe that any work done outside their official system could affect safety, accuracy, and their global reputation. But on the other side, there are people like Mat Armstrong, who believe that once a product is sold, it belongs completely to the buyer. Mat is not just any car enthusiast. He has built a massive audience by taking cars that are completely destroyed and bringing them back to life in his own workshop. He has rebuilt models from brands like Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, often working without official help. His process is open, recorded, and shared with millions of viewers around the world. But everything changed when he decided to rebuild a crashed Bugatti Chiron, a car so complex that even accessing some of its components requires splitting the entire vehicle into two halves. This is not something that can normally be done in a regular garage. Only a few facilities in the world have the tools and trained experts needed for such work. Despite this, Mat took on the challenge, showing every step to his audience. As the rebuild progressed, the situation began to attract attention at the highest level of the automotive world. Mate Rimac, the CEO of Bugatti, known for his deep engineering knowledge and strong stance on technical accuracy, publicly questioned some of the claims and methods shown in the videos. What started as a technical disagreement quickly grew into something much bigger. Discussions began about whether the information shared was accurate, whether the parts used were genuine, and whether such a rebuild could represent the brand properly. Soon, the conversation moved beyond social media and into serious discussions about legal action. The idea that a disagreement between a car manufacturer and a YouTuber could reach court-level importance shocked many people. But when you look deeper, it makes sense. This is not just about one car or one video. It is about intellectual property, safety responsibility, and ownership rights in a world where modern cars are filled with software that manufacturers still control even after the sale. If a case like this ever reaches a high court, it could set a powerful example for the future. It could decide whether companies like Bugatti have the right to control how their cars are repaired after being sold, or whether independent builders like Mat Armstrong are free to do what they want with something they legally own. This is why this story matters so much, and why it is being watched not just by car fans, but by legal experts, companies, and governments around the world. As the situation between Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac developed, the focus slowly shifted from a simple car rebuild into a much more serious debate about law, responsibility, and control. The core of the issue is not just about a damaged Bugatti Chiron, but about what happens after a car like this is sold to a private owner. In normal thinking, when someone buys a car, especially at such a high price level, it becomes their property completely. However, modern supercars are not normal products anymore. They are heavily dependent on software, encrypted systems, and manufacturer control tools. Companies like Bugatti argue that because these systems are extremely advanced and safety critical, they must maintain strict control even after sale. Their position is that if someone modifies or repairs such a vehicle outside official channels, it could lead to safety risks, incorrect performance, or damage to the brand's engineering reputation. This is where the idea of legal responsibility becomes very important. If a privately rebuilt hypercar is involved in an accident, who is responsible? The owner who rebuilt it or the company that originally designed it? This question is one of the reasons why discussions about court involvement began to grow. On the other side of the debate, people supporting Mat Armstrong see the situation very differently. Mat has built his reputation on taking heavily damaged vehicles from brands like Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin and rebuilding them using his own knowledge, tools, and independent workshops. He documents every step of the process, showing not only the success but also the failures, which is a big reason why his audience trusts him. From his perspective, and from the perspective of his supporters, ownership means full control. If you legally purchase a car, you should be allowed to repair it, modify it, or even completely rebuild it, as long as you are not breaking safety laws. This is where the idea of right to repair becomes very important. The right to repair movement argues that manufacturers should not be allowed to lock customers out of their own products through software restrictions, part limitations, or service-only systems. In industries like smartphones and farming equipment, similar debates have already happened. But in the automotive world, especially with high-end hypercars, the stakes are much higher because of the extreme cost, complexity, and performance involved. As the controversy grew, the public statements and reactions started to intensify the situation. When mate Rimac publicly questioned certain aspects of the rebuild and the claims made during the project, it was not seen as a small correction. Instead, many people saw it as a powerful figure directly challenging an independent creator with millions of followers. This raised concerns about influence and fairness. Could a company CEO use his position to shape public opinion about someone else's legally owned project? Or was he simply protecting the integrity of his company's engineering? These questions became central to the debate. At the same time, legal experts and automotive commentators began discussing what would happen if the situation actually escalated into court. In such a case, the court would have to consider multiple factors: intellectual property rights, consumer ownership rights, and the limits of manufacturer responsibility after sale. If the manufacturer wins such a case, it could set a strong precedent, meaning future car owners might face stricter limitations on how they can repair or modify their vehicles. But if the independent owner wins, it could significantly strengthen the right to repair movement and reduce manufacturer control over post-sale products. This is why the situation is being closely watched. It is no longer just a disagreement between a YouTuber and a car company. It is becoming a symbolic case for the entire future of modern vehicle ownership, especially in an era where cars are becoming more like computers on wheels and traditional machines, as the debate around Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac continued to grow. It became clear that this was no longer just a disagreement between two individuals. It had turned into a much larger conversation about how modern cars are controlled, repaired, and legally understood after they are sold. At the center of this conversation is the Bugatti Chiron, a machine that represents the highest level of automotive engineering. Built by Bugatti, the Chiron is not just fast or expensive. It is deeply complex, with systems that rely heavily on software, sensors, and tightly integrated electronic controls. Unlike older cars, where a mechanic could physically inspect and repair most issues, modern hypercars often require digital access, manufacturer tools, and encrypted systems just to diagnose problems. This creates a situation where the idea of ownership becomes more complicated than it appears on paper. Legally, a buyer owns a car, but practically, the manufacturer still controls many of its critical functions. This is exactly why the right to repair debate has become so important in recent years. Supporters of independent builders like Mat argue that once a car is sold, the manufacturer should not have the power to limit how it is repaired or who is allowed to repair it. Mat's entire career is built on this idea. He takes severely damaged cars from brands such as Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin and brings them back to life in his own workshop, often without official manufacturer support. His content shows every step of the process, making it clear that these repairs are not simple or casual. They require skill, patience, and deep understanding of engineering systems. However, when it comes to a hypercar like the Bugatti Chiron, the situation becomes far more sensitive. The complexity of the vehicle means that even small mistakes can have serious consequences. This is one of the main arguments used by manufacturers when they defend the control over repairs. From their point of view, allowing unrestricted access to systems or parts could lead to unsafe repairs, incorrect modifications, or reputational damage if a poorly repaired vehicle is shown to the public as a genuine example of their engineering. This concern becomes even more serious when a high-profile creator like Mat documents everything publicly for millions of viewers. Every claim, every repair step, and every result is instantly visible to a global audience, which increases the pressure on accuracy and responsibility. When Mat Rimac entered the conversation and publicly questioned aspects of the rebuild, it escalated the situation further. His position is not just as a business executive, but also as an engineer who deeply understands the systems behind these cars. From his perspective, if incorrect information is being shared about the vehicle's systems or the authenticity of certain parts, it could mislead the public and potentially damage the brand's technical reputation. This is why the idea of legal involvement started to appear in discussions. If disputes like this were to reach court, judges would have to decide where the line is drawn between free ownership and protected intellectual property. They would need to consider whether a manufacturer can control how its product is repaired after sale, especially when software and digital locks are involved. They would also need to consider whether independent rebuilders have the right to document and share their work freely, even if it involves complex systems originally designed by the manufacturer. These questions are not easy to answer, and they do not only apply to one car or one company. They apply to the entire future of the automotive industry. As cars become more digital and connected, the balance between ownership and manufacturer control becomes more unclear. This is why the situation between Mat Armstrong and Bugatti is being watched so closely. It is not just about one rebuild project anymore. It is about setting rules for the future of how cars can be repaired, modified, and understood in a world where software is becoming just as important as mechanical parts. As the discussion around Mat Armstrong and Mat Rimac expanded, the debate stopped being just about engineering and slowly turned into a much larger legal and ethical question about modern ownership. At the center of this entire situation is the Bugatti Chiron, a car that represents extreme engineering power, but also extreme control from its manufacturer, Bugatti. In the past, owning a car meant full physical control. If something broke, you could take it to a mechanic, fix it, modify it, or rebuild it without needing permission from the original manufacturer. But today, especially in high-end supercars and hypercars, that simple idea is no longer fully true. Modern vehicles are deeply connected to software systems, encrypted modules, and diagnostic tools that are often only accessible through official dealer networks. This means that even after a customer buys the car, the manufacturer still maintains a level of control over how it operates and how it can be repaired. This is exactly where the right to repair debate becomes important. Supporters of independent builders like Mat argue that ownership should be absolute. If someone legally buys a product, especially something as expensive as a supercar, they should have the freedom to repair it, rebuild it, or even fully restore it in their own workshop. Mat's entire reputation is built on this idea. He has worked on cars from brands like Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, often taking vehicles that insurance companies have completely written off and turning them into fully working machines again. His process is not hidden. It is filmed, explained, and shared with millions of viewers around the world. This transparency is one of the reasons his content is so popular, but it is also what makes it controversial when applied to a hypercar like the Bugatti Chiron. The Chiron is not just a powerful car. It is a highly controlled piece of technology. It contains systems that are so advanced that even small repairs require precise calibration and manufacturer-level tools. From Bugatti's perspective, this level of complexity means that allowing unrestricted repair could lead to serious risks. A poorly repaired system could affect performance, safety, or even the brand's global reputation if the car is later shown in public. This concern becomes even more important when someone like Mat documents the entire process online, because millions of viewers may assume that what they're seeing is equivalent to factory-level repair work. When Mat Rimac publicly commented on aspects of the rebuild, it added another layer to the situation. As both a CEO and an engineer, his concern was not just business-related, but also technical. From his point of view, if incorrect claims or assumptions were made about the car's systems, components, or repair process, it could misrepresent the engineering standards of Bugatti. This is where the discussion began shifting toward legal implications. If a manufacturer believes that its intellectual property, engineering design, or brand integrity is being misrepresented, it may seek legal clarification or action. This is how the idea of court involvement entered the conversation. Even if no formal case had yet fully developed, the potential legal questions are complex. Courts would need to decide whether manufacturers retain any control over their vehicles after sale, especially when software systems are involved. They would also need to decide whether independent creators have the right to fully document and share their repair processes without interference. These questions are not limited to Bugatti or Mat Armstrong. They apply to the entire automotive industry, especially as cars become more digital and less mechanical. In many ways, this situation reflects a broader shift in technology, where ownership is no longer just about physical possession, but also about access to software, data, and digital control systems. That is why this case, or even discussion around it, has attracted attention far beyond the car community. It touches on law, technology, consumer rights, and the future of how we define ownership in a digital world as the controversy involving Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac continued to develop. The conversation around it became less about a single car and more about a growing global issue in the automotive world. At the center of everything is a Bugatti Chiron, a machine built by Bugatti that represents the highest level of performance, engineering precision, and control technology. But unlike older generations of cars, which were mostly mechanical and could be repaired by skilled independent mechanics, modern hypercars like the Chiron are deeply dependent on software systems and manufacturer control tools. This shift has changed the meaning of ownership in a very important way. Legally, when someone buys a car, they become its owner. But in practical terms, especially with advanced vehicles, manufacturers still retain control over critical systems, such as diagnostics, software updates, and electronic resets. This is where the tension begins. On one side, independent builders like Mat argue that ownership should mean complete freedom. If a car is legally purchased, the owner should be allowed to repair it, rebuild it, or modify it without needing permission from the manufacturer. Mat's entire career is built around this idea. He has taken heavily damaged vehicles from brands such as Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin and turned them into fully working, road-ready machines again. His content is highly detailed and transparent, showing every stage of the repair process, from dismantling wrecked parts to rebuilding complex systems. This has made him extremely popular, but it has also placed him in situations where his work intersects with the interests of major manufacturers. When it comes to a hypercar like the Bugatti Chiron, the stakes are significantly higher. The Chiron is not just a car. It is a highly engineered system that relies on precise coordination between mechanical and digital components. Even small changes in its structure or software can affect its performance, safety, and compliance with manufacturer standards. From Bugatti's perspective, this means that allowing unrestricted repairs could introduce risks that go beyond individual ownership. A poorly executed repair could potentially lead to performance issues or safety concerns, and if such a car is publicly displayed as a Bugatti rebuild, it could impact the brand's global reputation. This is why manufacturers often prefer repairs to be done within authorized networks where standards can be strictly controlled. When mate Rimac publicly responded to aspects of the rebuild, it added a new level of intensity to the situation. His involvement was not just as a corporate executive, but also as an engineer who understands the technical depth of the systems involved. From his point of view, if inaccurate information or assumptions were being shared about the car's components or repair process, it could mislead the public and create a false impression of how Bugatti vehicles are built or restored. This is why discussions about possible legal action began to surface. While no confirmed court case had fully materialized, the idea of legal escalation raised important questions. If such a dispute were to reach court, judges would need to carefully evaluate the balance between intellectual property rights and consumer ownership rights. They would have to decide whether manufacturers can retain control over repair processes after a product is sold, especially when software and digital locks are involved. At the same time, they would need to consider whether independent creators have the right to document, share, and publicly present their repair work without interference. These issues are not unique to Bugatti or Mat Armstrong. They reflect a much broader transformation happening across industries where physical products are becoming increasingly connected to digital systems. As vehicles evolve into software-driven machines, the traditional idea of ownership is being redefined. This is why the situation has gained attention far beyond the automotive community. It is no longer just about a single rebuild project. It is about the future, how ownership, control, and repair rights will be understood in a world where technology is deeply embedded in everyday objects. As the situation surrounding Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac continued to unfold, the discussion moved further away from a simple disagreement and closer to a wider legal and societal debate. At the center of it all remains a Bugatti Chiron, a symbol of extreme automotive engineering created by Bugatti. This car represents the highest level of performance, precision, and technological integration in the automotive world. However, it also represents a growing shift in how modern vehicles are controlled after they are sold. In earlier times, cars were mainly mechanical systems. If something broke, a skilled mechanic could physically repair or replace parts without needing approval from a manufacturer. But in today's world, especially with advanced hypercars, the situation is very different. Vehicles are now deeply connected to software, encrypted systems, and manufacturer-specific diagnostic tools. This means that even after a car is sold to a private owner, the manufacturer can still influence how it is repaired, reset, or even restarted. This change has led to growing debates about what true ownership actually means. Supporters of independent builders like Matt argue that ownership should be absolute. Once a car is legally purchased, the owner should have full freedom to repair or rebuild it in any way they choose, as long as safety laws are respected. Matt's entire reputation is built on this principle. He has worked on heavily damaged vehicles from brands such as Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Aston Martin, often taking cars that insurance companies had completely written off and restoring them into fully functional machines. His approach is transparent and educational, showing viewers every stage of the rebuild process. This has earned him millions of followers, but has also placed him in situations where his work overlaps with the interests of major manufacturers. When it comes to a vehicle like the Bugatti Chiron, the complexity increases dramatically. The car is not just a machine made of mechanical parts. It is a highly integrated system of electronics, sensors, and software controls. Every system inside the car is designed to work in perfect coordination, and even small changes can have significant effects on performance and safety. From Bugatti's perspective, this level of complexity means that repairs must be carefully controlled. If a car is rebuilt outside of their official system, there's concern that incorrect methods or non-certified parts could lead to unreliable performance. Even worse, if such a car is shown publicly as a Bugatti rebuild, it could create confusion about the brand's engineering standards. This is why manufacturers often prefer to keep repairs within authorized networks where every step is monitored and controlled. When mate Rimac publicly responded to aspects of the rebuild process, it added a new layer of seriousness to the situation. His position carries both corporate responsibility and deep engineering knowledge. From his perspective, if incorrect claims were made about the car's systems, components, or repair accuracy, it could mislead the public and damage the technical reputation of Bugatti. This is where the possibility of legal involvement began to enter discussions. While no confirmed court case has been officially established, the idea of legal escalation raises complex questions about intellectual property, consumer rights, and post-sale control. If such a case were to reach court, judges would need to carefully evaluate whether manufacturers retain any legal authority over how their products are repaired after being sold. They would also need to consider whether independent creators have the right to document and publish their repair work without interference, especially when that work involves highly advanced and proprietary systems. These questions are not limited to one company or one individual. They represent a broader shift in the relationship between consumers and manufacturers in an era where physical products are increasingly controlled by software. As vehicles become more digital, the definition of ownership is becoming less clear, and this situation highlights the growing tension between innovation, control, and consumer freedom in the modern automotive world. As the discussion surrounding Mat Armstrong and mate Rimac continued to spread, it became clear that the situation was no longer just about one rebuild project or one car. It had grown into a much larger debate about control, responsibility, and the future of ownership in the automotive world. At the center of this entire controversy is the Bugatti Chiron, a machine built by Bugatti that represents extreme engineering and precision. However, it also represents something more modern and more controversial, a car that is heavily dependent on software systems and manufacturer control technology.